Greetings! Today I have a retro piece of audio equipment to take apart and have a look at what makes it tick. This is a Panasonic RX-5030L. So it's an old style boombox, probably 30 or so years old. If you're old enough, this will probably bring some memories. This is really old school. They don't make equipment like this anymore. Believe it or not, this is the thinking about it, this is the predecessor of iPod, Walkman and everything else. This was the first personal music player. It was this big. The only thing is you didn't carry it in your pocket or clipped to your jacket. You carry it on your shoulder and you're blasting your music away. Hence the name Ghetto Blaster. And not only you listen to your music, but the whole neighborhood can listen to your music. And let's have a look. So on the front, for those who don't know, this is what you used to get before MP3s came. Before MP3s came, believe it or not, if you wanted to have music on your personal music player like this, you would put a blank cassette. You could buy them just like you can buy blank CDs. You can buy a blank cassette and you would tune into a radio station that plays your favorite songs, usually in the evening when there was more music than talking on the radio, and you would wait with your finger on the record button. You would wait, and when just a second of silence before the music comes on, you would press record and start recording. And if you were lucky, it was a song that you liked, so you could continue, and when the song stopped you could press stop and wait for another one. If you were unlucky and it was the song you already had, or it was a song that you didn't like, you stopped, pull out the tape, use a pencil. Now it couldn't be a round pencil, which either triangle or hexagonal shape. You would put a pencil in the tape and unwind the tape back a little bit. Then again, repeat the process all over again. At the front of the device, we've got a nice, beautiful scale for the radio, 4-band radio. So we've got normal FM, long waves, medium waves and short waves. And I cannot show you how it feels, but when I turn this thing, it just feels amazing. It feels precise. It feels like came out of factory yesterday. There is no glitch, nothing is rubbing this. I mean, the point I'm trying to make, they don't make things these days like this anymore. Everything's mass produced as cheaply as possible. This thing, when this came out, this was the top shelf equipment, at least for a home, probably as far as personal music players go. Over here there is a little graph showing the THD, harmonic distortions with versus the level and whatnot, and underneath you've got a nice LED bar graph. This had two purposes, three actually. Back in the day, that was the main purpose of this. Was back in those days when this was out and about. If your personal music player had blinking LEDs on it, it was at least 30% cooler than the one without LEDs. So that was the main reason they put those on. But it also had a practical application, two actually. So one, it would show you your signal level, so either coming in from your tape or from radio, but this also had a auxiliary input. So if you were oversteering the preamp in this, you could see that here, and you'd know that what you're recording is going to sound horrible, so you would back down a little bit the signal on the input. So with a nice switch over here, which is broken by now, you could either switch off the LED bar graph. You could put it into middle position, which would then show you the level of your battery, so it would tell you how much juice have you got in your cells. Or you could switch it to the last position, and that would basically show you your signal level. So that was really handy. I mean, you'd never switch that off, you always keep it on level, and it was blinking, and it was really cool. Okay, moving on. At the top we've got 3 knobs, one for the tone. You could adjust on the preamp between treble and bass. Most of the time that was somewhat closer to the bass than treble, if not all the way to the bass, so it was blasting so hard that people 3 blocks away or 3 streets away could hear you. There is balance left and right, which I think the only reason for was to check if both your speakers are working, because if it's blasting it's kind of difficult to tell if both of them are, and you would just turn left and right and to reassure yourself that both of your speakers in your Ghetto Blaster are performing well. And the main knob volume, those things were loud. They were really loud. Those speakers in those Ghetto Blasters, they would move some air, seriously. But anyways, that's the main power switch. There's 3 switches on here that are broken off, unfortunately, and this unit has suffered some abuse, so it's not operational right now. I will tear it down and see what I can salvage from it. Maybe I can reuse a couple of things just to retrofit some retro stuff into something new as a little project, but I'll see what we can do with that. But anyways, in the tape, when it was in the tape, it was basically switched off unless you had your play pressed in on your cassette. And those clanking switches, you don't get that on a CD player. You wouldn't press a switch like that. I miss those things, you know. Back again to what I was supposed to say. Radio. Then this, if you put it in the radio mode, that would switch on the radio, and then you can tune into your station using the fantastic knob on the side. By the way, let me just turn it around. You've got 2 knobs. So there is coarse tuning, and then there is another knob for fine tuning. You could basically get your station perfectly. And another thing, sleep. So what that was, I'm not exactly sure. I think what it was, you could put it into sleep and the unit would switch off after preset or pre-designed into this amount of time. So you could go to your bed, put on your radio or put your cassette on, and this would play back maybe for half an hour and then just go to sleep. And unless you cycle the switch on and off again, it would stay off to preserve maybe battery or just so it doesn't play throughout the whole night. Then we've got stereo and mono and beat proof. So what this was, if you were in an area that's got rubbish FM reception, you would flip it down to mono, which would blast the same signal out of both speakers. And this, due to the way FM works, the way the modulation works, in mono you need slightly lower quality signal out of your antenna, and you still can get a decent audio signal out of it. If you want stereo, you need a significantly better FM signal, a lot stronger. So this is what you do, you would adjust to see how it works. It changes a little bit the way it demodulates between the first 2 modes, and then changes the sensitivity, and then it goes down to mono, just to improve the sound quality. Sometimes, you know, mono signal of good quality is better than a stereo with a lot of cracks and noises and hisses and all sorts of things. Another switch, that's to choose your band, FM, frequency modulation, long waves, medium wave, short waves. Those switches are fantastic. That's another thing that modern equipment just doesn't have. This almost feels like a quality test gear. The way it clicks, it's just so positive, and so it just clicks into place. None of that, not like touch screens. I mean, this is just so much better. And tape selector, normal, CR02 and FECR. So what this used to do, now this unit is not as advanced. Some units used to have an automatic detection, which was done by a series of little cutouts at the bottom of the cassette. So those would basically press or not press little pins inside the cassette deck, and this would tell the device what type of cassette it's using. So normal, CR02 and FECR, those were different types of magnetic material used on the cassettes, and they required somewhat different settings, different level of magnetic field when recording them, and also when playing them back they would produce a slightly different signal. So you would need to adjust a little bit the amplifier on the magnetic head to how it picks up the sound, or how it records the signal onto the tape, just so you get the best out of your medium. So let's get this unscrewed. Really long screws, that's not that uncommon considering the depth of the device. Double insulated symbol, two little squares, which basically means it doesn't require ground cable to be connected to it. Because everything outside is plastic, and it's nothing is conductive, and technically you shouldn't be able to get anywhere near the mains voltage unless you completely disobey the warnings on the back of the unit, which says you get killed as if you open this. Okay, strangely a little hole over here with a little arrow. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll see when we open this. Now there's two more, and I suspect I might have to take the antenna out as well. From what I remember, that usually was the case, that the antenna was holding up something else as well, usually. So you'd have to always remove the antenna before you actually attempt to take the back cover off. Okay, I think the front wants to come off first, so since we've taken everything off, I'll pull this to side, turn it around, There we go. Whoa, that smells like really old stuff. Well, speakers are in quite good shape. We've got two, let me pull the cable out first so we can disconnect the front panel speakers, which disconnect quite nicely for convenience. And we've got two 3-ohm woofer speakers, so the main sound producing equipment, and two little ceramic tweeters. Those were, I think, 8 ohms, or maybe a little bit more. But yeah, this was matched to the what the amplifier was inside, so that's all there is to it. And the cassette assembly comes apart. There is a nice little springy piece of metal, so when you open the cassette, or rather when you close it, this kind of pulls it in and holds it in place. Unfortunately, here is the first fault with it. So the cassette holder, the piece of plastic it's broken here, so there is a bit missing. I think that is what was rattling inside. No, actually we've got some sort of a pill inside. That's interesting. So yeah, that's the front of it. Let me put this aside and we look at the electronics inside, but before we do, let me extract the pill. Now, as this is an audio equipment, this probably was on quite a lot of parties, house parties, raves. Makes me think, what is this? I mean, clearly it's a pill with no markings on it. It looks like just a tablet, regular medicine, quite large in size. I'm not gonna try it, but yeah, interesting stuff you can find in random miscellaneous electronics equipment. Yes, that's gonna go to the bin. Bear with me. Okay, is there anything more rattling? No, we've got a piece of plastic, something plastic tube, but this was deposited by someone inside. It's not part of the device. Anyway, let's have a look. So what we see over here is the scale, and I'll go over this in a moment. There's quite a bit of mechanical contraption to make it work the way it does. This is the counter. So, and as you can see, when this motor was spinning round, this would count up. You can always reset the counter by pressing the button, and that gets it all the way to zeros. This is the cassette assembly, so no auto reverse on this, by the way. It just went one way, which means that if when your cassette finished, I think it had auto stop, but if your cassette finished, you'd have to flip it around to listen to what's on the other side. And yeah, the way this worked, you've got a little roller, which when you that's the eject button, so this is just a lever to eject the tray for the cassette. When you pressed play, the cassette one spool was here. It went all the way around those things, past the head, and around onto the other spool. When you press play, there we go. This was the main. So sorry, actually the spool was here, and this was the one that was collecting the tape, so it was going this direction. So this is the main roller that would hold the tape at a constant speed. This roller here would pull. There is a little bit of a clutch in here going on, so oops, This bit here was driven by the motor through some selection of gears, and it would drive this, and that would collect the tape. Now, due to the fact that the more tape you wind up, the diameter becomes bigger, and at the same angular speed you would be collecting more tape. That would change the pitch of your music recorded, because the recording was they were always recorded at linear speed for the tape. So what this always had, this is clutched, so it's not a gear, it's just a rubber ring driving a collector tape. And this would always pull ever so slightly. It wasn't so much, because otherwise it would stretch the tape, but this would just pick up any slack in the tape. And this roller here, the roller is free running, by the way, it's this little pin. There we go. So as I said, this bit here is just drives by friction the spool to pick up the tape. This rubber free running wheel was pressing against the pin, and the pin in itself was driven by the motor. So if we powered up this motor, you would see this will start turning. This is the readout head, so read and write head actually. So this would pull the tape this way. The slack would get picked up by this, and the tape was dragged in front of the head very slowly, and the head, magnetic head, it picked up the changes in magnetic field recorded on the tape, and that's how it made sound. Now this, the actual head, the bit that reads off, I'm not sure you'll be able to see this, I'll try, but it's not centered. The actual readout head, you see the darkest strip at the bottom of the head, right there. There's a slightly darker strip, and it's a little bit magnetic, I can feel. That was slightly offset, so which means when you turn the tape around, I don't know how wide it was, about 5 millimeters or so, the cassette tape strip, you'd be able to fit 2 tracks, and one would go that way, one that way. So when you turn the tape around, you basically get the second side. This here was just a tensioner. So in the cassette tape there was a little a piece of felt on a tiny little spring that would ever so gently press the tape towards the head, and this was a tensioner. It also worked as a auto stop mechanism in many cases, but maybe not in this one, because this maybe it did. I think it has to be powered up, because when the tape finishes, so there's no more tape here, this was pick up this thing a little bit, this lever a little bit, the tension, and would just press it up, and that would pick up, another gear would pick this up and basically disengage the whole thing. But I don't think I can show you. Let me just see if I can move some gears to make it do that. Maybe not. Anyways, the last bit here, this is just a passive component. It's basically a magnet, a small magnet embedded in a plastic. So when you press record, and by the way, on those things you can't press record unless the tape has got protection pin still in place. Once you recorded the tape, you could basically break off with a piece of knife or screwdriver a little tab on the bottom of the tape, and this would basically not press this pin here. And without that pin pressed, you can't press record on any player. This was a standard. So if you wanted to re-record a tape that was had the tab broken off, you either stick a piece of paper into a hole that was left after the tab, or put a piece of tape over it, and then it presses it again, and then you can press record. So let's see how this works. I think you've had to press both play and record. There we go. You press play and record together, and basically 2 heads come down, in which case the tape goes the same as before, but before it gets to the head, which now it's not reading the sound but it's recording the signal onto the tape, the tape passes right in front of the magnet prior to getting to the write head, or read write head, and this magnet basically erases all the contents on the tape, basically realigns all the tiny little magnets on the tape, and makes it fresh. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, you'd get a mixture of both previous and current recording and whatnot, so it just wouldn't sound nice. So yeah, that's how the cassettes used to work. I'm sure this would have auto stop, but I can't get it to actuate. It must have been, it's got to be powered up, I think, for another gear to pick this up. Anyways, let's stop this up. So what else? Over here we've got a knob. It's not a pot or any electronic part, to be honest. Over here, only thing it does, there is a string of wire attached, and it's a loop that goes through around many different components and parts, and also drives the needle on the scale. Now traditionally this would go somewhere through a big variable capacitor, which I thought would be this one, but I don't think it is, so I'll have a look where I'll find it. That would be the part. Yeah, I think it is that one actually, because I can see the string on the side disappearing and going. There we go. You can see that it goes that direction. So this is probably the cap that changes. Basically has got a lot of blades that either overlap, which increases the capacitance, or this pulls them apart from one another, which decreases the capacitance. And yeah, that's how you change the frequency of a radio in a circuit. The fine tuning knob is an example of a capacitor like that. It's connected probably in parallel with the other one. That's this one here. You can probably just about see something moving around. So this hasn't got an end. You go from 0 to maximum, then gradually decrease, and it becomes 0, and it starts increasing again. So you can fine tune it a little bit. Yeah, moving on. What I was talking about somewhere here. Let's take this off. So the front bezel is held by clips. That come off just like that, and that's the scale. Thin piece aluminium with the nice scale and the THD little diagram and whatnot. So yeah, I'll put that to the side, and we can see over here the wire coming in from the main knob over some pulleys and disappearing into the back, and we'll probably see in a moment that it disappears even further to the backup. So let's take the level meter out. Again, that's on a separate board held by a couple of 3 clips. The meter is done on a IC LB 1405, and it's got a little trimmer pot to adjust the level. I had a little think about earlier on what I'm going to salvage from this, and try to possibly, if I have enough time, to reuse this as a whole piece, some sort of music player, obviously without a lot of the stuff over here, but something that would just maybe reproduce the retro sound of this. Definitely this is a part I'd want to keep. So I had a look on the schematic and the construction of this whole thing, even though it's one or two, no, just one large PCB at the back. Everything on there is quite modular, so for example the amplifier is as long as I trace a few tracks out, I can probably take the whole amp out of this, even using the same board and whatnot. Just need to cut it out carefully. But for now I'm going to cut this out. Let me just find my smaller snips, not sure where they are. Okay, can't find the snips. Let's just use a blade to cut the wires off. There we go. So this is the meter module, and that stays in. You can see the old school type of trucks where the kind of flat filling certain areas and whatnot. By the way, you can see a lot in many places, a lot of this wax type of thing. This is not something leaked out of the cap. It was a common thing before the hot melt glue gun. Hot melt glue was commonly used. Before, if you wanted to stop something from rattling inside your equipment, you just cover the whole thing in wax. As it is over here and here, there's just quite a lot of it, especially around the coils in the AM circuit. So okay, what else can we take out? It seems that the next stage would be to start taking this whole black assembly out. So let's see, maybe those two. Okay, just small self-tapping screws. Okay, that's just a guide for the needle. So let me put that away. Okay, we've got a screw over here. And the knobs on the side should pull out. Okay, there we go, one. And this big one comes as well. And another self tapper. And there is one here, and one here. So 3 more, and I think that should be it. There is quite a few screws in this, but nothing like a modern printer. Let me tell you, if you're ever in a shortage of all sorts of small screws, just find a junk printer and take that printer apart carefully, piece by piece. Try not to break anything, that's a challenge. Which is almost impossible when you do that, because I have some of them that I've taken apart. I have no idea how do they put those things together. Oh, I think we're gonna have to take the cassette player out first. But anyways, if you take a printer apart, you'll end up with probably a glass full of screws, easily over 200. So yeah, if you need screws for little projects, an old printer is where you should be looking for. I don't entirely know what I'm doing here, because I'm not sure how was this put together. But okay, this seems like this worked. So we can, yeah, I'm just gonna snip those wires here. because those are actually soldered in. So let's see, and the whole cassette thing should come out. Oh no, there's the head connector. There's more of blue gunk, which makes it somewhat difficult to take apart. So let's see. I don't want to break anything purposely. If I break something, I want to do it, I mean accidentally, I meant. If I break something, I want to do it purposely, but accidentally I don't want to break anything. So okay, there we go. And one last cable, which is thankfully on a plug. Why didn't I put a plug on the motor cable? Everything else is I guess this was just resoldered after they've put in the whole assembly in. So there we go, a little bit on the cassette mechanism altogether. So let's see, what I'm looking for is a pin that moves this. It's probably this edge over here. Okay, so there we go. A motor drives this whole assembly, and there we go. If you put it into play mode, as I turn the motor, you can see the little roller starts turning. Strangely, this pin doesn't turn, which it should. Oh yeah, it does turn. It's just when I turn this, it doesn't turn. So there we go. So I'm not sure if you can see that. Probably not. How can I show it? There we go. Put a little bit of white tack on the thing so you can see. It starts spinning, showing the white tack in, and that's how it keeps constant linear speed on the tape. Let's take the white tack out. What else? There we go. That's how auto stop works. So it was auto stop, so I'll show you that again. So as the tape goes here, the tape is somewhat here, but as it goes round, it goes a little bit down and back out to the source spool. And as this spool becomes empty, the tape stretches out ever so slightly, and there's only a tiny bit of, not much, just a little bit of pressure. As long as this is lifted, when it catches onto a gear, and when it goes any further, it just stops and disengages the whole mechanism. That's why the whole thing knows when the tape comes to an end. It will just click out, stop, and there it is. This bit here is just a switch. Whenever it's pressed in, it connects, so this most likely engages the motor to start spinning. And there is also another thing, another switch. This is a common type of switch on cassette player. I'll show you in a moment. So whenever you press something, not everything though, the play doesn't seem to do it, but the record, let me see the direction. Aha, yeah, when it's rewinding, in a fast rewind mode. It also presses on this. This is a really long switch that just moves a little bit, but basically it's got quite a few contacts underneath there, and that changes something in the circuitry. I think it puts higher voltage onto the motor and a couple of other things, and changes the direction and whatnot, so so the motor can spin faster, and you can rewind the tape and or rewind it in the other direction and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the cassette system. There's quite a lot of mechanical involvement in this. Amazing to look at. Now he's got a lot of fluff and hair and other things stuck onto it, so a little bit disgusting, but yeah, that's what you get with old electronics. Usually they have quite a few secrets inside. So let's put that away. Okay, moving on. This we tried to take out, so let's see what else might be holding this in place. You know what? I think this whole black assembly comes out all together with the main board because of the wire. So this gets instead the wire dial and whatnot. This gets reassembled before they put it actually in the enclosure, because I think otherwise it would be impossible to thread the wire through everything. So let's try to attack this on the other side and take the side panel with connectors out, which, okay, no, that's attached to the board as well, so I think it's a matter of unscrewing every screw inside and then hoping it will come out. Strangely, some of the screws are red and some are not. But I guess it's just passivation. The partially red. They might have lost the redness from age, but whatever was embedded in plastic, because it was not exposed to atmosphere and oxygen, it didn't lose the color. But like this one, for example, it may have had a little bit more of the red passivation on it, so it retained more of it, but it surely would have lost the color in a few years. So I cannot see any more screws. Okay, what is this? Oh, this is an interesting bit. So they've got a ground connection that goes onto a pin to make really good contact with the whole cassette tape assembly. That's important because the cassette itself, the magnetic head picks up really tiny signals, so if something was not grounded, it would have been quite a problem. It would have hissed a lot and made all sorts of noises. Okay, I can see now that before I pull it out, you know, I'm gonna unscrew the transformer as well. And the battery assembly, that should come out just like that. Oh yeah, and the voltage selector switch. And my camera stopped recording again, but yeah, just need to get those removed because those are the remains of the selector switches are preventing the whole thing from popping out. And there we go. Oh, we've got another dose of medicine in here, exactly same as the other one. It could be just a pill, or it could be a special pill, but I'm not willing to try. Here is a piece of cardboard just put on those little pegs, and the pegs then got melted down. Why is that? We'll see in a moment. Or maybe, oh yeah, it's a shielding, so it's a silver backed thing on the back, and there's a ground connector, so this is just to increase shielding, provide some shielding on the radio circuitry. Okay, that's the connector side plate, so I'll just disconnect this, the DIN connector. Okay, the connector is held in place with a metal bracket purposely made to this. So yeah, and that's the side panel that just slid off. There's quite a lot of metal work involved in a lot of the old electronics. Well, that is strange. Let me show you this, but I have to disconnect the transformer or the switch or something, because it's becoming a little bit inconvenient. You know what, I'm gonna have to desolder this. Okay, there we go, that's the big circle I was talking about. But yeah, let's actually fire up the soldering station. I'll desolder the connector, the mains power connector, from the board, and then we should be able to continue. Although I am tearing this down, I don't want to just rip it apart and destroy it stupidly. It's far more satisfying to just slowly take things apart properly. Besides, when you melt a solder on such an old equipment, the smell is quite special. There we go. So yeah, melts quite easily. It's none of this lead-free nonsense like these days. No one used to care back in the days about a lot of things. Oh, I can smell it. Here's a tip. If you're having trouble sucking the solder out of something, sometimes it's easier to solder it better before you desolder it. So adding a little bit of solder just refreshes the whole thing and helps to transfer the heat into the part. So when you get into the second time, it leaves you a nice clean hole. I'm gonna do that with the first one as well. we go. Okay, that's gone out. And now just those two guys, which are just pins. I'm just going to take the whole pin out. One. Two. There we go. So that's our transformer. As you can see, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 separate taps. This is obviously negative, and the live gets switched between 4 separate taps. Separate tap for each voltage, depending where you are. So yeah, this will stay aside. Okay. So what we've got here is this. Here we've got audio section. These were the knobs to control the audio, the balance and volume and bass, treble and whatnot. This chip here under the heatsink is the audio amplifier, which I will attempt to keep. This section here was responsible for the cassette player and all the preamping of it and control of the motor and whatnot. There is a, is that a shield or a heatsink? No, that's a shield. So not much power happening over here. And this whole assembly here, this is all radio stuff. So there is a AM and FM radios over here, just different band frequencies. And this bit here, yeah, this component here is basically 5 caps. So you've got 4 adjustable small caps at the top, which you can trim a little bit, little trimmers, and this thing here is basically a big trimmer. So as you turn the frequency knob, as you turn it, this goes around really slowly, making fine adjustments to the frequency of the receiver. So quite a neat design. I might actually take this out and show you. Maybe someone's interested to see how that looks like. Ferrite antenna for AM. Yeah, that's all there is in it. So let's see if this melted in. No, that's held in place with some more screws. So let's take those out. Okay, something's falling off. What is it? Oh, the heatsink. Yes, the heatsink for the audio amp. So definitely have to keep that. Okay, there should be one more screw somewhere. No, maybe just clips. There we go, 1, 2, okay. So I need to unscrew the wheel. That's not a self-tapper, by the way, that's regular screw that goes into the trimmer, so we can take that off now. You see all the little pulleys that were being used for the scale. And often reason for repair in old radios, when you used to repair electronics before, because nowadays obviously if something breaks you just throw it into the bin, but the scales would break if someone was getting to the end of the scale and turning, some naughty child for example, and they would break the scale, so then you wouldn't know what frequency you're on. So back in the days you used to repair this kind of stuff, and if you just take it apart, get a piece of string and basically rethread the string through all the pulleys and all the little notches and whatnot, reattach the scale, calibrate it a little bit, and helps your uncle. That was a repair done, and you could get some money for repairing it. Just clip and the microphone, and what have we got here? Well, that's interesting. Most of the switches are mounted on the board, and this one little switch is mounted off the main board, just on its own little connector. I wonder why is that? Okay, anyways, let's get him unscrewed. Okay, and that's the pulley for the main frequency, and that's not connected to any component. That's just simply a fitted pulley. There's no bearing in there, but it's just fitted. The tolerance quite nice, and then it's stuffed with some grease, so it gives a nice feel to it. It doesn't just rattle and turn loosely. It's got some a little bit resistance to it, which makes it gives it that nice feel. Okay, but anyways, let's have a look. Now I know why this connector is separate. Can you guess? So this connector was the tape selector for the chromium FECR, so iron and chrome, or chrome oxide or normal tape, which was something else, some iron thing only, I think. That switch is there on a separate board because they didn't want it here, and they didn't want to track all those signals from the cassette through the noisy radio track. That would cause problems in both ends, but especially that would make the whole device behave interestingly when you try to record stuff from the radio. So that would cause all sorts of problems because you'd have both circuits switched on. So that's why they've put it all. They're all shielded cables. The grounds are connected on the other end. nicely. The other end is not connected, not to create a ground loop. So the ground is connected on this side, and then it's just cut off closely over here. So otherwise, that's another story that would cause a lot of problems. What now? I think I will. Oh, we can have a look at the amplifier. LA4126. I knew there was something I've forgotten about. Check out this DIN switch, or plug switch combo, I guess. So here is the, I'm not sure if that was common thing. So here is the DIN plug, DIN socket, I guess, and the plug, when it was coming in, it had a sleeve around which pushed all the way in. What you have inside is a little pin over here that, if you press it, is springy. When you look from the side, you see that you've got just a switch that is soldered on to the DIN switch, and as soon as you plug in the plug, that's how it switches the signal. It basically knows to use it disconnects the speakers. Does it? Possibly. And it also uses auxiliary input. That's why there was no switch for auxiliary, or for auxiliary input. It was automatic. As soon as you plugged in the plug, this thing knew what to play. And yeah, all those switches, quite nice switches, I must say. There is a little ball clicking in different positions, so I might keep those switches just for, for what they are. Anyways, let's have a look at the tuning cap. That might be somewhat interesting. So I've seen one before. As a kid, I was pulling stuff apart, and I've seen not one previously. So but someone might be interested on how this thing looks like. So yeah, let's take that out. I'm just gonna get this desoldered, and I'll come back to you. There we go. So I pulled this out of the board, got this desoldered. So this is what the device in question looks like. It's got all model number RCV4RC 2VK A8124. Now that might be a date code. 24th week 1981. There we go. There we go. Older than me, if that is the date code. But then the whole Ghetto Blaster might have been made later on, just this was produced a little bit earlier. Okay, so this is actually beautiful. So we've got those tiny trimmer caps at the top, and this is probably gold plated, and this is just for fine tuning. And then when you look inside, there are those tiny little fins that go through two separate, actually there's three separate sets of capacitors. So there's one at the top which you can see, the first section. So sorry that I got out of focus. Then there's another one, very thin, just composed of 3 layers, and another big one at the bottom. There's residue of all that nasty wax, but that didn't make a difference to the whole thing, because wax didn't do much to any of this. and because it was softish, even if it got in between the little fins of the cup, it would get pushed out. So not too much of a problem. Do you know what? Let me get a macro lens on. Okay, there we go. Now it's clearly visible. So at the top you've got those tiny little things that you can fine-tune it somehow by turning the top screws in and out a little bit, and then let's use this side, it's much more visible. There we go. So you can see the tiny fins, and as you turn in they interlock with one another. There's another set static and the center pin turns, which then basically creates more surface in a capacitor and increases the capacitance, and that as a part of LC circuit will adjust the frequency. So here you can see there's basically two sets of plates, one static, one not, one moving, and there's also a tiny sheet of some sort of dielectric, some very thin foil. You can see that over here. You can see it's sticking out just a little bit on the bottom set, and then as you move in, oh, and there is a fourth actually cap at the bottom, which I didn't see before. So yeah, there's 4 cups in this whole setup. The top one, then the middle one, one more big one, and another tiny one at the bottom of the whole assembly. Yeah, nice little thing. Here you can see it's covered in the wax, so a little bit iffy, but as I said, that wax doesn't really make a difference whatsoever to the whole thing. These are the little insulator pads, dielectrics, and yeah, that's what a frequency trimmer adjustable cap looks like. Quite a nice nice little thing. I mean, you don't see that every day in your average Arduino. So yeah, interesting to see. Okay, let's move on. Actually, have a look at the switch. So although it's just a switch, the way mechanically how it's been made, you can see all the brass pins and the little ball bearing that makes it positively click into one place. That is just nice, isn't it? You can see the little notches over here, and they just click in and out of the ball. Really nice switch. There's an unusual marking on the chip. It's a nice power package, so you've got not the whole thing encapsulated in plastic, you've got the metal exposed, the metal that the die sits on the bottom of it to increase the thermal conductivity, and unusual blue marking on it. So yeah, that's something interesting. Another thing something interesting is that I don't see any Panasonic caps in this. Well, this was made by Panasonic, or maybe they had different markings back then, or maybe they just didn't put their own caps in this. I've got TK brand, which I might be wrong, it might be a sub brand of Panasonic. I'm not too sure, but they all say Japan on them, so they're all Japanese caps, and you can see after all those years not a single one has bulged up, swollen. So yeah, those caps are definitely quality. I think that's it, to be honest. I'll see what I'm gonna focus now on tracing out the amplifier circuit, and cutting that out of the board. I want to keep that, maybe the power supply and amplifier, to keep it as true to the original as possible, and then I'll see what I can make out of it. But anyways, as far as this goes, I think we can call it quits. I think I've waffled long enough anyways. So if you did like me tearing down this Ghetto Blaster retro piece of kit, please feel free to click like or subscribe. This is probably the longest video I've made, so if yeah, if you liked it, click like, subscribe. Please do leave a comment if you've got something to say about this, if you've got anything to add. Other than that, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, take care.